we've often talked about Mr. Luxon having that kind of CEO vibe. Everything's good. Everything's on the up and up. Da, 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 da. What happens tonight when Mr. Luxon gives headline news to the country about a coalition breakthrough? He hasn't told the other two people about this. And both Seymour and Winston are a bit like, oh, in fact, Winston goes into that's all a bit of conjecture, is it? And it's like, no, Luxon has said this. But you know what I thought when I saw this, Chewy, before we play it? It is the CEO thing. It's like, I've talked to my managers, now I'm going to make the announcement. You know what I mean? It's completely, and both Luxon and both Seymour and Peters get caught out. And because Winston's always on the attack, when he hears something that he doesn't know, he immediately thinks it's bullshit from the media, and then he has to backtrack. But of course he won't. He still ends up saying, no, it wasn't what you said, when it was. He just refuses to believe it. So let's have a look at this debacle of a coalition situation we're going through at the moment with, as someone said in the chat, the three-headed hydra and the coalition breakthrough that only one person apparently knew about.
There's just a couple more steps to go. That's David Seymour's response after Christopher Luxon said National has agreed on policy programs with ACT and New Zealand First. There was some mixed messaging from the three leaders today on how close they are to finally signing off a coalition deal. Here's Deputy Political Editor Mikey Sherman with the latest on the negotiations.
Hi, Mikey.
There was no raining on Christopher Luxon's parade today. The Prime Minister to be finally bearing some good...
Was it a joke? You're the comedian. Was that because it's raining?
It's joke adjacent. It's kind of a pun, but it's backed up by the fact that visually, like she said the words, and then visually it's raining.
No,
so
see, that's why I'll never get that. I'll never get this comedy thing. It's too detailed. I can't figure it out.
Good news.
We've achieved, I think, a significant milestone overnight, and that is that we have actually closed out and agreed our policy programs with both ACT and also with New Zealand First.
Agreement after 17 agonising days of negotiations, flitting between Wellington and Auckland as the parties went line by line through each of their manifestos.
We've worked our way through all the policy positions and the differences and the different mechanics for achieving the same or different goals.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Chewy. What Luxon's saying is we have no more policy things to agree on. They're all done. That's what I'm hearing. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah. It's starting, right? So why is he not announcing anything?
Well, what happens after the leaders agree is then it has to go to their boards. So I get that there is a step, but what it sounds like he's saying is everything's done and dusted, bar the, what do they say? Bar the shouting. Is that the thing? This is probably appropriate if Winston Peters is involved. So it sounds like he said, we've agreed to everything. It's imminent. That's the vibe I get from him. It's not the same vibe you get from the other two.
Goals.
There were plenty of sticking points. It's understood New Zealand First rejected National's plan allowing foreign buyers back into the housing market, while ACT's treaty referendum was also put in the too hard basket.
Look, I mean, all three parties have had to make trade-offs along the way. That will be revealed when we make our final announcement.
Today's public update, though, seems to have been a surprise to some.
You're making an assumption, and
Christopher Luxon revealing to media.
See, this is Winston going on the attack. You're making an assumption. But Luxon's already announced it. It's pretty embarrassing for Winston.
They'd reached a deal.
Well, yes,
but didn't give his new mates the heads up.
Look, I'll tell you later on.
I suspect Chris got up and had one too many wheat bix, but I can understand his enthusiasm. There's just a couple more steps to go.
ACT and New Zealand First met today, finally laying eyes on each other's arrangements.
Look, we had a...
Now, isn't that shocking? They met today, finally laying eyes on the other's arrangements. That means they hadn't seen it before today. Day 17 was the first time, according to the report, that ACT saw New Zealand Firsts and New Zealand Firsts saw ACT's, what they want and what they're prepared to give up. Day 17, Chewy. But remember, master negotiator, master something.
Look, we had a really good chat. We're talking about policy. We're talking about the agreement. There's a whole lot of things that, we need to work through.
We want them to be able to support each other's programs. We want all three parties to be able to support all three policy programs and agendas that we have.
Pressure has been building to get a deal across the line.
For businesses, it's extremely frustrating. The economy is still really in a dire straits. We've got the cost of living crisis, inflation's still there, retail spending is down.
For business, time really is money, waiting on policy promises like scrapping fair pay agreements within the first 100 days.
So what we're really wanting to see is all of those promises.
Because that's what we want a government to do. Get rid of our workers getting fair pay. I mean, that's exactly what we want to do, eh? No more fair pay. What we want is to be able to screw you down and make it as difficult as possible for you to get a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Let's just get rid of those fucking things.
If you're an employee and you voted for National, fuck. That's what you've done.
To yourself and all your fellow co-workers.
Yeah.
Well done, you. Well done, you.
Made on the campaign trail to start getting enacted.
I really do appreciate everybody's patience with the process, but I do believe it'll actually make for a much stronger government.
But first, getting on the same page, Winston Peters finally receiving the update from Christopher Luxon.
Now remember what we said? This is Winston Peters. Now we should go, oh yeah, no, sorry, you're right. I did get the update from him, but Winston doesn't know and can never take a backward step. So he comes out and says,
For Luxon.
I want to find out from him that what you said he said was actually true. And I found out it wasn't.
Well, an update of sorts.
So it wasn't. So in other words, I disagree with how you've packaged what Luxon has said, even though they packaged it fairly. And so he just refused to back down. Now think about that as a character, right? On Winston Peters, that has to be dealt with by ACT and National for the next 3 years. Never back down. Even look, the water's wet. Nope. No, water's wet. Nope. I checked with the scientists to see if what you were saying was correct, and it's not. No, there's Winston Peters for you. So, what are your thoughts, Joey, of the coalition of chaos?
Out of those three statements, like as far as you have to speak to the media during a negotiation, do you know who did the best job there? David fucking Seymour. Like, say some words. Don't commit yourself to anything. And more importantly, don't commit your negotiation partners to a position or a point of view either. Just keep it light and airy. Luxon is bad at this because he's a rookie. He's learning on the job. He's still in his trial period. But he's going at, like, it'd be like if he was in business and he was taking over a company, running and telling all of his shareholders the deal's done before the other guys have told their team what's happened. You would not do it. That would tank a deal.
Yeah.
And
it's like
he can't do it. He doesn't know who he's working with. He has probably not taken on board anything that he's been told about dealing with Winston Peters, which is just shut the fuck up until you have everything locked down, because the media will go to Winston and Winston will make a big song and dance out of all of it. So just don't give it to him.
What you've basically got, and this is where he needs to learn, and I'm going to try and be generous rather than saying he's shit at it, which he could also say, but needs to learn, is basically what he's got is 3 CEOs of equal standing. That's the equivalent that he's got. So he's not the CEO. And like Matthew Hooton said last week, we're going to play a clip from Matthew Hooton this week, and he might say it again. But like he said last week, in a merger or in a business takeover, it's the big one that can walk away because it doesn't impact them. It's normally the littler company that actually loses out if you don't merger. This is the other way around. So it's actually completely foreign territory to someone who's used to checking in with his managers but doing what he wants, and also being in the position of power. Because he's not. It doesn't matter that he's the biggest party. He's not the one in power, because the other two could comfortably sit across the benches and screw Luxon completely. He's actually the weakest of the three. I'm not saying when it comes to passing policy, he's got the most MPs, but when it comes to this negotiation, and I should be generous and say most of us have never done that before, but because he sold his negotiation skills, his merger skills, and his CEO-ness as a reason he can do it, that's why we criticize him more than we would criticize, let's say, a John Key, who probably hadn't done it either before, but he never really sold it as strongly as Luxon has, in my opinion, Chewy.
Yeah, he's been in such a hurry to justify a whole bunch of stuff that, again, like this has been an election of leaders painting themselves into corners.
Yeah, including
I think Yeah, absolutely. Higgins did a lot of it, but yeah, this is Luxon doing it himself as well, and just being completely unaware of the positions that he's taken and how the optics are going to be when the table's turned.
Yep.
You go on about wasteful government spending. I noticed now that they've gone back to their offices and stuff like that. They're not necessarily using the hotel as much anymore. Because you can't spend 6 months going on about wasteful government spending and then spend a week answering questions about how much is being spent on this negotiation by going, parliamentary services are cool with it, so I don't think it's a big issue.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a fantastic. I always think FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. I'm not sure if that's what it's called in New Zealand, as to how much these negotiations have cost. Because remember, the criticism of the left, of the Labor government, was wasteful spending. This will cost $100,000. Like, all up, this will be $100,000 in my opinion, my honest held belief. It'll be $100,000 to do this negotiations. And most of us, probably me included, would be like, oh, well, if that's what it costs to get this done, fine. But we have to continue to measure them by their standard of Labor. It's essential that we keep measuring, especially ACT and especially National, based on their standard that they want to hold Labor to, right? At the very least, that's what we need to hold them to. And if Labor spent, let's be generous, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 on let's say, talks with the Greens over a something, they would rip them a new one. What's the difference?
We're coming into periods where, like, government departments being told that they can't have an end of year function, or people are going to lose their jobs right before Christmas because government spending is out of control. You can't hold these two things in your mind at the same time. The other thing is it's optics. Like, on one hand, yes, if they hadn't been making statements about how wasteful government spending is out of control and just obscene, the cost of living crisis, squeeze middle. If they hadn't been going on about that, I literally would not care where they meet. Because it's, yeah, sure, I understand you've got to do a negotiation. Sure, do it wherever you want. But because you've taken those positions, then people are going to ask those questions. Now, if you know that, a savvy political operator, and they can't all be political dimwits, someone in that room is going, don't know if we should have it at $1,000 a day in a hotel, pulling that number out of thin air. That's been reported.
It's been reported $1,000 just for the just for the room, $1,000 a day. That's been reported.
Catering and flights,
yeah,
and all of
much more than that.
If you know that that's what you're going to be counted on, it front foot it. We're having our treaty our coalition negotiations in a community hall, somewhere between our three electorates. It's costing us $50 a day. We're ordering Domino's. It's like, look, because we know, New Zealand, that you're doing it tough, so we're going to do that as well. It might be performative as all fuck, but it's optics.
No, you've said it perfectly, because all the way through the election cycle, ACT in particular, David Seymour was, your regular New Zealander has to tighten their belt, so the government should too. Literally was being said. Kiwis are struggling to pay the bills, so they're tightening their belts, the government should too. Except for when we want to negotiate for 17 days at a cost of $57,000. I don't know, whatever it costs. So yeah, no, it's completely fair. It's completely fair.